Welcome to the penultimate episode of Matt and Scott Pick Barbra Songs. There's only one episode left. Can you imagine? We have made it almost all the way through the amazing discography of Barbra Streisand. And we've got a big show for you today. As always, we have my partner in crime, Matt Howe. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hi there.
Wearing another Evening from Harry Stoon's t-shirt.
Exactly. Thank you for noticing.
And we have a special guest back with us today, the extraordinary Mr. Jay Landers. Welcome, Jay.
Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in.
Well, we could not wrap this series up without bringing you back one more time. For those of you who've been watching this show, I forget when we started it. Was it October or something? I feel like we've been doing it forever. That book seemed way off. Is it ever coming? Well, I'm here to tell you that from the information I'm getting, the book is going to arrive in the warehouse in 2 days from now. Once it gets in the warehouse, they will ship them to me and I will be shipping them out. So by all means, go to tuckerdspress.com and get your book. I know that I'm the publisher and it's my job to make you buy this book, but please believe me, I think they're going to sell out really quickly. If you're waiting because you think you're clever, you might be waiting a really long time. I would get a copy. Matt, I heard a rumor that you did this show without me while I was gone. That's not true, is it?
I did 3 shows without you. That's how long you were gone.
Oh my gosh, I cannot imagine.
And I was a hit.
This is what happens. You just don't want that understudy to come in.
Cats away, the mice will play.
This is exactly what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to start today with Partners is our first album, but I want to get off on a little tangent and talk about Burt Bacharach because he passed away while we were on hiatus. And I think Barbra is just, her recordings of his songs are amazing. Jay, could you tell us anything about Burt and Barbra?
Well, they had a lovely personal relationship, friendship, and she was a tremendous admirer of his melodies. I'll just tell you a funny story, because you know the songs that she's recorded of his and Hal David's and a couple with Carol Bayer Sager that they wrote. We were rehearsing for one of Barbra's concerts that she wound up singing Alfie in. And you would know which concert that was because you're
Timeless. For Timeless.
So we're at a rehearsal stage, a sound stage in Los Angeles, big, like they film movies, but we were using it as a sound stage with a full orchestra. And Barbra starts to sing Alfie. And she says, what's it all about? Tell me what do you lend on an old golden rule? Something like that. And she goes, what does that mean? Does that mean like the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you? Or what does that mean in the context of the song? And she starts pondering aloud on mic in front of 70-piece orchestra and everybody else that was in the room, the grips and the sound people and the whole thing. She just cannot let go of exactly what this turn of phrase means. So she looks at me and she says, can you call Hal David and ask him exactly what he was thinking of when he wrote that lyric? And this song has been sung, it's been sung 1,000 times by many, many great artists, and nobody's ever asked that question, but she's asking it. So I leave the set. I don't think there were cell phones even, were there? There must have been.
Not in 2001. Yeah.
So I remember I had to go to somebody's office and I call Hal David's office. And the assistant says, well, Mr. Davids is not here, but his son is here. His son is named Jim David. I kind of knew Jim from back in the day, so I get Jim on the phone and I said, Jim, I need a real quick answer. Barbra's on the set, rehearsing the song. It's going to be in the show, on the record. What's that lyric mean? He says, I don't know. I'll have to ask my dad. I said, well, can we call him up right now? He goes, well, he's in China. And I said, and they don't have phones in China? And he says, well, he's on a cruise in China. And I said, and they don't have communication on the boat? I need to speak with him right anyway. 10 minutes later, Hal David calls me from a boat in the China Sea. And I said, I'm going to make this real quick, Hal. You know, what does that lyric mean? What do you lend on an old golden rule? And he goes, I have no idea. It just sounded good. Is that the real answer? He says, that's the real answer, but let's think. It's like a promise or something. I don't know. It just sounded good to me. So I said, okay, that's the answer. So I went back in, walked up onto the stage, and she put the microphone down at her side so we could have a private conversation. And I said, the truth is, he really thought it just sounded good. It invoked something. And then I started helping Hal's explanation, saying, you know, it evoked a feeling of a promise or a broken promise, but it was more of a mood kind of thing. And she, whatever I said, she accepted in that moment, or decided to let it go. I don't know really, but anyway, she did do a beautiful version of it. And but when I hear her sing that, I think of me saying to Jim David, and they don't have phones in China.
I think he definitely invented a turn of phrase for sure.
Yes.
It sounds like something that we've been saying over the years, but
Yeah.
You're right. If you dig down, it like doesn't kind of make sense.
Yeah. Well, you know, as the actress who sings, she wants to understand the script. So it's a completely logical question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
That's my Burt Bacharach story.
Yeah, I like it. So let's get to Partners. How did Partners come into Barbra's career?
Well, I think we had kind of gotten into that rhythm of trying to create a theme for each album, whether it was a Christmas album or a movie album. And the idea of a duets album came to mind. I think that other artists of similar stature to Barbra, thinking of specifically Sinatra and Tony Bennett, and I think Elton John and a couple of other artists had done successful duet records. And I've always enjoyed Barbra's duets. She's just a great duet singer. So the idea of Partners was to do a duets record. That's that simply. But I think if going back a little bit before that, Barbra had been to somebody's party and had seen, might have been Carol Sager, but she'd been at some party where Kenny Babyface Edmonds had gotten up and done a kind of an impromptu performance. And she went up to him after the show, after the party, and said, "You have such a beautiful voice. I love your style." And she had also loved the soundtrack to what was the song where Whitney
Waiting to Exhale, I think.
Waiting to Exhale. She
right.
loved that. She loved the song, the Shoop Shoop song. She loved the feeling of that, not the lyrics so much, but she just liked the whole rhythm feeling of it, which was a Kenny song that he'd written and produced for Whitney. Is that correct? I think that's correct.
I think that's right. Yes.
So anyway, and I wasn't that overly familiar with the whole album. I did know that song because it was a single, but I hadn't seen the movie and I didn't know the rest of the album. And the rest of the album were other artists, in addition to Whitney, singing songs that Babyface wrote, produced, arranged, etc. So I called Kenny and I said, you remember when you met Barbra several months ago? We're sort of following up on that. Would you like to do an album with her? And that out of that became, and why don't we try to make it duets? Because in my mind, Kenny knew every artist on the planet, and all loved and admired and respected him. And I thought, and how easy would it be for Kenny or I to pick up the phone and say, hey, Kenny is producing Barbra. In my mind, everybody would go, well, where do we sign up to sing duets with Barbra? And what I didn't know at the time, and I only found out sort of after the fact, because I didn't have access to Matt Howe's website to like know these things instantaneously, was that on that Waiting to Exhale song, a lot of the arrangements were by Bill Ross, who works so closely with Barbra. So it's interesting how Barbra kind of, and Barbra didn't know that either. She doesn't read record jackets to see who does, the arrangements. So she just, her ear went to it as like, that's a sound I like. And it really was a combination of Kenny and Bill that made that particular album have the feeling that it does. So again, Barbra's instincts and her ear kind of drew her to that sound palette, if you will. That's how the record started. And there was never an intention to make it Barbra and her guys or Barbra and all women. It's just that everybody that we reached out to a number of people, men and women. And just as the yeses started to come in and the song choices started to fill up, it just took a natural evolution that it became all men. And then maybe we could have found one song for a woman, but then it would have been, 10 guys and one woman. So it just seemed more natural to make it Barbra in the center photo, like Hollywood Squares, Barbra in the center square, and then the other men around her. So it was it's just how it organically grew. It wasn't premeditated in that sense. The Tony Bennett and Frank Sinatra templates are, I happen to have worked on both of those records quite extensively on the Frank and only with on the Barbra cut on the Tony ones, but they all just took the old songs of those artists and reimagined them as duets. So that might have been the original conceit for this album, which we'd get Stevie Wonder to do People and a couple of others, but I think Kenny did Evergreen. There was a couple of old Barbra songs on there. And then, it just sort of organically grew. So that's how the record got started. And then of course, and I kind of buried the headline, to bring in the musical sophistication that was required. Kenny is a genius with background vocals, feel, great rhythm guitar player, overall a true musical genius, but doesn't have the reference of chords and old songs and other things that Walter Afanasieff had, the classical background, if you will, that Walter Afanasieff has. And Kenny and Walter knew each other well. So I thought, it would really be the best of all worlds to have Kenny leading the charge on the vocals, background vocals, and kind of feel, and bring in Walter for the chordal sophistication that Barbra often asks for, but doesn't know how to ask for in terms of like, can you play the B over the C and then do a diminished thing? Walter speaks Barbra's language, so he's able to say, oh, you mean like this? And so it just made the whole thing all the easier.
Nice. I thought they were a great team.
They really
Great
were.
team.
They really were a great team. It worked out, and they loved each other, and we had nothing but laughs, and it was a really fun experience from top to bottom.
So Matt, what is your pick from this album?
Well, I don't want to be rude to our guest, because there are two songs on the album that are not Streisand classics, that are new songs, which is I'd Want It to Be With You, which she sang with Blake Shelton and later Willie Nelson. But also Jay's song, I Can Still See Your Face, which was the duet with Andrea Bocelli. Jay, you wrote it with Bernie Herms and Charlie Midnight, is that right?
Correct. Correct. You're
Yeah.
going to say you don't like them, or you do like them?
I'm going to choose something else, but I do like the song.
Okay. I thought you were preparing me for the fact that those were your least favorite songs.
No, I'm preparing to let you down that I didn't choose your song as my favorite.
No problem.
But anyway, I'm going to go with The Way We Were with Lionel Richie. I listen to it all the time. I always put it on a playlist. I think it's got such a great baby face sound to it. And as a guy that grew up in the 70s and 80s and listening to Endless Love and Dancing on the Ceiling, I just thought it was really in Lionel Richie's wheelhouse too. And Barbra sings some amazing, different, out there notes. And I just think the whole thing was the most successful out of all the remakes of songs. So that's what I'm going with.
Good pick, good pick. I'll go next, and we'll let Jay finish up. You know, it was interesting when I listened to this album, and almost every song I was like, this is in contention. This one's in contention. Like, it's a really, really good album. But I have to say, when it ended with Elvis Presley and Barbra with that arrangement, there's something so simple about that last song. I was really and truly moved by it. And so I'm going with Elvis. And, you know, as someone who knows the story that he could have been A Star Is Born, you know, not that we don't love Chris, of course we do, but it's interesting to have them finally together. So I feel like that mix in as well. So I'm going with Elvis.
Well, let me comment on both of those two songs, because as far as the Elvis goes, it is one of the most ingenious arrangements that you could ever hope to hear for a pop song, because if you listen to Elvis's original recording of it, which is just acoustic guitar, and you listen to, with no key changes whatsoever, and you listen to Walter's arrangement of it, where there are numerous key changes, you go, well, how did Walter manage to keep Elvis in the same key throughout the song and make him sound like he's shifting keys? It's just absolutely ingenious. And it would take a musicologist to show you the sleight of hand he used in order to keep Barbra moving around Elvis, but make it seem as though they're moving around each other.
You know, Jay, I write about this in the book, and I'm not a musician and I don't read music and I can't negotiate what you're talking about, but I love on this album how Walter definitely has these modulations happening. I can hear them happening. I know it's a modulation. I know that Billy Joel is singing in a different key than Barbra, but how he manages to get them and it sounds like a whole, I just think is magic.
It's really part of Walter's genius, part of his genius. So that was that. And then the funny story that I recall about The Way We Were is that Lionel is, if ever there was anybody who has the job they were meant to have, it's Lionel. He loves music. He loves being Lionel Richie, and he has so much fun with it. And he seems to do it effortlessly, with joy. So he and Kenny were at Kenny's studio and recording his vocal, and we finish it up and we bring it to Barbara, and Barbara flips out. She wasn't there at the time, but she flips out and she goes, but he keeps singing memory. And so he would go, memory. She says, it's not memory, it's memory. And it has to match with my memory. Otherwise, it's going to sound like we're singing two different words. Anyway, we asked Lionel if he would come back to fix the O, right? So we're there for like an hour, and every single time he approaches the line, it comes out memory. So I took a photo. So we finally, Kenny and I drew like a phonetic memory kind of thing, and we held it up in front of him when he was singing, and he got it right. And then the three of us took a photo of the card, memory, the phonetic card, and sent it to Barbara.
Oh, I love it.
And if I can find that photo, Matt, I'll send it to you for your website. If I can.
I love that. That's a great story.
So yeah, but the whole album had these fun moments like that. So you want my favorite song?
Yes, sir. We need
Yes.
Well, gosh, I'm looking at the list here. I enjoyed every single one of these songs for different reasons. I loved the way, am I allowed to pick two, or are we only doing one?
You're allowed to do whatever you want.
Okay, well, I loved the way It Had to Be You came out with Michael Bublé.
Yeah.
Barbra, when she has her lyric sheets, she does something that every time I do this for another artist, they go, what a great idea. She has the lyrics with numbers next to them. So it's line 1, it had to be you, line 2, it had to be you, line 3, I wandered around, line 4, I finally found. So that way, when she wants to do a line over, let's do line 5 over. And everybody knows what she's talking about. Nobody has ever done this. It's the strangest thing. So we distribute, and then for duets, we do, line 1 through 4 or line 1 through 5, that's Barbra. And then line 7 through 12, whatever it is, that's the other singer. And we'll put them in a different color so that they can always go right to their thing. And then when it's a duet part, we'll put it in a different color. So there's like, follow the numbers, follow the colors, and you will always know where you are. But even with the best intentions, either Michael saying Barbara's line accidentally or Barbara saying Michael's line accidentally, and we all looked up and we went, that's better than what's on the written page, the fact that they did that. So we left it that way. So there was sort of those things that are like unintentional, I don't know how else to describe them, like happy accidents.
Happy accidents, yeah.
Happy accidents. So I really loved It Had to Be You because of that, of how it evolved. And you can, as the A&R person or the executive producer or the producer, you can sit and imagine it 1,000 times exactly how it's going to be interwoven, the duet will be interwoven. But when you finally have these two great singers at their respective microphones and they start to sing, and it comes alive, then you have to make quick adjustments to take advantage of the fact that they're feeding off of each other. So that's a great one. I'll just tell you, I won't tell you it's my favorite song because I did have a hand in the writing of it, but I'll just tell you funny, Willie, the story of why it became Blake Shelton. So if you type in Willie Nelson, Barbra Streisand on Google, you'll find many, many interviews with Willie where the interviewers say to him, you've sung with everybody from Julio Iglesias to so-and-so to so-and-so, who would you like to sing with? And he always would say Barbra. So I knew the interest was there. Barbra thinks Willie is fantastic. She loves his voice, loves his voice. So, because we've said this on your show, I think before, but it bears repeating that singing is not just the act of hitting the right notes and singing in tune or having velocity or being able to belt or anything. It's about communication. So Bob Dylan communicates. He's not Pavarotti, but he communicates. And then sometimes you'll see these kids on these talent shows with incredible voices, but they don't seem to have any connection between the mind and the throat and the soul and the intellect. So it's not all the pistons aren't firing at the same time. Willie is one of those guys who you believe what he's singing. So Steve Dorff and Bobby Tomberlin and I wrote this song about friendship. And we flavored it with little references to Willie's career and Barbra's career. So Willie says, "You're still that funny girl to me." And Barbra says, you still make me crazy, or something.
Right.
We had little things like that. So Walter and I go to Willie's studio. I'm sorry, I back up. So we did a demo with Barbra singing her part and a guy singing Willie's part, so that we could lock in the harmonies perfectly, so we'd know what we were aiming for when we went to see Willie. So I send the demo to Willie's manager, who calls me and says, "Willie loves this. He can't wait to do it." We set a date. We fly to a place called Pendergast, Texas. I believe it's called Pendergast or something like that. Anyway, we drive forever. I think we went to Austin, and then we drove to Pendergast, and we drive and we drive and we drive. And now we're in a little town that kind of looks like it's right out of Green Acres. And we finally get to this place that looks like it once might have been a golf course, what do you call it? A golf club. What do you call those places?
I think golf club is right.
Oh,
Yeah.
like when you join like a country club. Sorry.
Oh, right.
It looked like a burnt out country club with dilapidated tractors and golf carts and corrugated tin roofs. And it just looked like a burnt out country club. And we go in, and the guy says, "Well, Willie will be here in a moment." And we sit there for a while, and we're kind of in this it's very ramshackle. That's the word I was looking for. And Willie walks in, and God, he looks like he just walked in off a billboard. He's got the hat and the pigtails and the bandana, and he looks exactly like you would hope Willie Nelson would look. Very friendly, lovely guy. And after a little chit chat, he goes into his vocal booth, and where he sits, by the way. And he's got an engineer there who's been his engineer for 100 years, and we do a take. And it is instantly clear to Walter and me that if he has heard the song, he certainly doesn't have any memory of hearing the song. And he kind of stammers his way through it. And the engineer looks at me like, "That was pretty good," right? And I looked at the engineer like, to get the sound, maybe it was pretty good in his ears, but we have to do that a couple more times. So the engineer looks at me like, "Oh, you're taking your life into your hands, man."
Oh, God.
So I said, "Press the button, please." And he pressed it. I said, "Willie?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "That was good. But I think we need to hone in a little bit more on some lines that didn't come off exactly like we'd hoped they would," or something like that. Trying to be very diplomatic. He goes, "Okay." And he sings it again. And it's like 1% better. Maybe I'm being stingy there. It was maybe like 20% better. I go, "Okay," push the button to the guy. I said, "Willie, there's a couple of harmony lines that Barbra really is hoping to capture with you. Would you mind just letting us focus in on those?" He goes, "Okay." So he does one pass of that, and then I say to the guy, press the button again. And I go, Willie, dead silence. Willie, I said, maybe he took his headphones off. Willie, I walk into the thing, Willie's gone. He went out a side door that I didn't know was there. So I said, is he coming back? The guy looks at me, nope. Like, it was really like we were really outsiders in this world, you know.
Wow. Willie has left the building.
He's left the building. So I called his manager and I said, hey, I'll stick around another day if he wants to come back. He says, no, Willie's left he's already on the road. He's on his bus. He's on the road again. And I was like, well, gee, do you think we could get him to come back at another time? He says, maybe. And so I said, listen, I have to be really blunt here. Nobody wants Willie on this record more than I do as the co-writer of the song. And Barbra really is hoping that they can sing together. But if we can't get him to come back, I'm going to have to try to find another singer. And I don't want to do that. And he goes, okay. He calls me up about a week later. He says, listen, Willie's going to be in Los Angeles doing a concert there. So he could come by the studio and he's ready to do whatever you want him to do. Fantastic. So on the day of the session, he calls me and he says, what time? The manager calls me and says, what time will Barbra be there? And I said, Barbra's on a yacht in Italy. We just need, Barbra's done her part. We just need Willie's part recorded. He says, well, if Barbra's not going to be there. I said, okay. So remember what I said? Now I'm going to have to act upon it. And my co-writers, Steve Dorff, was friendly with Blake Shelton, who came in fully rehearsed. And all we did was adjust some of the lyrics. So instead of On the Road Again and Crazy, we referenced a couple of Blake Shelton songs. And I think he did a fantastic job. But I was always, in my heart of hearts, wanted to have another crack at that Willie Nelson song. So the technology had come along in the intervening decade, I guess, when we finally included it on, was it Release Me 2?
Release Me 2.
Yeah. So we got out the old tapes, and to my surprise, he wasn't as off the mark as I had thought he might have been. He just didn't hit every little nuance that we had put on our demo. But taking away what our expectations had been at the time, it turned out that he had kind of sung it rather well. And so we were able to, move his phrasing around a little bit so that he was more locked in with Barbra. But it was, I was very pleased with both versions. So as a songwriter, I got 2 bites at the apple, which was very,
now we get it.
Now we get it. Very
yeah.
unusual. But really, in my heart of hearts, I was hoping that Willie would have been on Partners, as much as I really love and appreciate Blake Shelton.
I thought when I finally heard the Willie Nelson version on Release Me 2, I thought it was very sweet. It's a different, obviously a very similar song, the same song, except with the things that you talked about, but it's very sweet.
Anyway, my favorite song on the album that I still listen to for my own enjoyment is Come Rain or Come Shine with John Mayer.
Oh, so good.
He came into the studio, we were all there, and Barbra is not like a John Mayer blues guitar aficionado. And when she saw him sit down and play, she was absolutely overwhelmed at how gifted he was. And the concept for that song was a direct lift from an album that I love to this day called Riding with the King. And it's Eric Clapton and B.B. King playing, it's like a duets record of theirs. and they did a version of Come Rain or Come Shine that's very similar to the one that Barbra and John did. So that's how that song came to be chosen.
You know, John Mayer's kind of music isn't my favorite, but I had some friends that took me to when he was playing with the Dead. I think it's the Grateful Dead, like remaining members, and then John would do lead guitar.
Yeah.
I was blown away.
Yeah.
One of the best guitarists I've ever seen. Amazing.
They became good friends after that, John and Barbra, and he came to a couple of her birthday parties, and he performed live for her at one of her birthday parties, which was really charming. And then when Barbra was honored by MusiCares, which I think happened around the same time as Partners, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a year after, I'm not exactly sure.
I think it was before, Jay. I think it was like 2011 or 2012, something like that. Because you know why? Because What Matters Most, she sang 2 songs from What Matters Most.
Oh, well, that could be. But the reason why I mention it, I'm sure you're right. The reason why I mention it is, you know, when Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, who was the leader of Led Zeppelin, and Jeff Beck were considered the 3 guitar gods of early 60s UK blues. And they were all in the same group together called the Yardbirds. And Yardbirds, when the Yardbirds split up, they became, Jeff Beck went solo, and Jimmy Page formed Led Zeppelin, and Eric Clapton formed Cream, and then a whole bunch of other group, Blind Faith, and incredible solo career, etc. Derek and the Dominoes, couple, so very, very active guys. Anyway, they were all great friends and friendly rivals because they all played blues guitar. So anyway, when the MusiCares thing came up, I wanted Jeff Beck to play Come Rain or Come Shine and play the Eric Clapton part of the B.B. King Duets record. And then we got another guy who's very friendly with, I'm blanking on her name, LeAnn Rimes. Another guy.
LeAnn Rimes, right.
Guy who, a very friendly guy named Daryl Brown suggested LeAnn Rimes to me. And so we put Jeff Beck, LeAnn Rimes, and then BB Winans together, and they did a version of Come Rain or Come Shine, which was really lifted the roof off of that place. So, and Barbra loves Come Rain or Come Shine because of the Harold Arlen connection. So everything, you know, kind of comes full circle around Barbra, Harold Arlen, and that song, and that's why I love it so much.
So there we go. We had our discussion about partners for this episode. Jay will be back next week to discuss Encore. And, you know, why am I not holding the Barbra book? Because we only got 1 copy, and I sent it to Matt so he could look at it. Did he send it back to me? No. Just because he wrote the book, he gets to keep the 1 Barbra book we have? But don't sweat it. More books are on their way. I'm told they're coming in 2 days, that they'll be in the warehouse. Then I'll place the large order from the warehouse to get them to me, and then I will start shipping them out to you. Yes, Matt is signing them. A lot of you have asked. They will be signed. They will come out in boxes, wrapped in bubble wrap. We're going to take real good care of them. I personally think they're going to be sold out by April 24th, but I guess I don't know. We're kind of working on a second printing now, but my point is order or miss out at tuckerdspress.com. And as the show is winding down for us, as we get to the next few, I just want to thank all of the Barbra fans who've been so kind to us, sending us nice messages, sharing the videos, and I just want to say thank you because I really do appreciate it. So while I said there's only 1 more show left, we're going to split Jay into 3 parts. So there's technically 4. Or this counts as 1, that's 3. 3 plus 1 is, well, I'm a writer, not a mathematician. We'll see you next week.